This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and exciting times here. This is going to be one of the hottest phones of the year. This is the Samsung Galaxy S6 Edge. Now, the S6 and the S6 Edge are the same phone. The only difference is the curve on the side with the edge. If you get the regular Galaxy S6, it's going to look, well, I hate to say it, but kind of like an iPhone. It's going to have more traditional sides on it. So we figured we'd do this one first because this is the one that throws a variable in there, which is the dual curve display. In addition to that, we have the latest, greatest Samsung Exynos CPU, even on US versions. No Qualcomm Snapdragon here. Glass front and back, Gorilla Glass. Actually, a beautiful looking phone. That's another big change for Samsung. They finally realized, okay, everybody's giving them a hard time for making cheap, plasticky looking phones. There it is. Things you might not like. No more removable battery. It's a unibody, aluminum and glass phone. Uh-oh. No micro SD card slot. Why that is when HTC and Sony can put one in with the unibody phone, I can't tell you. And it's not water resistant anymore. That doesn't mean if it gets a little splash, especially on the glass here, you know, nothing's going to happen, but you can't take this in the pool with you. Anyway, we're going to look at it now. So this is the Samsung Galaxy S6 Edge. At first blush, you might say, I can't believe this is a Samsung phone. It looks really, really classy. Here we have the actual real aluminum frame around the sides. That's not faux chrome, faux aluminum. That's real metal on the sides, and the beautiful curved glass here. Certainly the S6 Edge variant is the one that catches the eye more because, I mean, when have you ever seen a phone with a curve on two sides? We saw the Samsung Galaxy Note Edge, which had a curve on one side and actually functioned a little bit differently. Technically speaking, that really worked as two separate displays. There was an edge display that was addressed separately from the main display. Think of it like two monitors but fused together under a curve. So the Note Edge has actually more functionality than this guy does. I have to say, particularly when the screen is off, the black model, which has sort of navy blue highlights when bright sunlight catches it or good indirect light, anyway, it looks the coolest because it just looks like, wow, it's just sleek, right? So this is going to cost you $100 more than the regular Samsung Galaxy S6. It's up to you as to whether it's worth it. Obviously, at retail, these guys are kind of expensive. So you're looking at $679 starting price, generally speaking, for Galaxy S6. This, depending on the storage, you can go all the way up to $960 if you want this with 128 gigs of storage. You could buy a nice Core i5 Ultrabook for that. But these days, all the major carriers are pushing various payment plans. So what you're really looking at is $4 or $5 a month more, if that's the route that you're going with the payment plan or the T-Mobile Jump, where you trade a phone in every so often, every year or whatever. From the back, both the Galaxy S6 and the S6 Edge are identical. The same look here, and you get the same little wart for the camera hump, which is just, unfortunately, not the most aesthetically pleasing part of the device right there. It really does kind of stick out a lot, but we'll forgive them because they put one really nice camera in here. The phone's available in your choice of white, black, which is this color right here with the hints of navy on it, and gold. Now you folks in Europe are lucky. You can get the Edge in green and you can get the S6 in blue as well if you like. In the US, we're not having those color options just yet. So far, no carrier branding on any of these, which has been nice. This particular one is a T-Mobile review unit. And you can see we still have the same flash along with the heart rate sensor in the back. This also does double duty as the selfie button. If you have the front camera activated, the idea is you're probably holding it like this, so you can just tap here and use that as the shutter button, which is a pretty cool design. What do you get, the Galaxy S6 or you get the Galaxy S6 Edge? You're gonna get Samsung Exynos 7420. That's an octa-core processor. Now folks, that does not mean that this has 8 cores that are being used all at the same time. It's a big little architecture. It's called 4 low power cores to handle less demanding tasks and 4 higher power cores. So it's kind of like 2 sets of quad cores. One to save some battery power, the other one to do the heavy lifting. That architecture is not unlike what actually Qualcomm's doing with the Snapdragon 810 with the ARM A53 and A57 cores inside, and even Tegra's been doing the 4+4 kind of thing. Now, Samsung likes to clock things up a little faster, so compared to the Snapdragon 810, the low power cores are like 100 megahertz faster. So 1.5 gigahertz for the low power cores, which hardly sounds low power anymore, does it? That's pretty fast clock speed. And 2.1 gigahertz for the high power cores. Is it fast? Yes, it is. Is it 64-bit? You bet it is. And Samsung has actually lightened the load on TouchWiz quite a lot now. You just look at your multiple home screens, they're not changing things too much there. We got our Flipboard if you want that on there as well. navigating is much quicker. This is definitely the best version of TouchWiz yet. I am not a super duper fan of TouchWiz. I found it a little heavy-handed. I'm not super fond of what they do with the icons. I say leave it to Android and Lollipop and the lovely material design and the developers who work so hard on their icons to give us the icons that we want. But it's less cartoonish than ever. And the settings used to be just about terrifying. There were just so many of them. So they made them a little bit more organized, a little bit less onerous. Still, you might forget where something is, and you can use the S-Find function to actually just look for more arcane settings here. There's still plenty of TouchWiz features going on. You got the multi-window if you want. You've got all sorts of gesture controls, some of which are nice, like picking up the phone to actually dial a call, putting it face down if you don't actually want to take a call. A lot of good stuff there. A lot of it's actually turned off now, though, I think because Samsung was trying to be less heavy-handed with the UI. So you can go in and you can look for your favorite Samsung features if you're already a Samsung person upgrading from a Galaxy S4 or Galaxy S5 and turn them back on again. There's a heck of a lot of stuff here. We look at display, for example, Smart Stay, which I actually like. It uses the front camera to keep an eye on you, and it won't turn off the screen while you're reading. If it sees you there, I turn that one back on. We've got adaptive display mode that saves some power, so the whites will look a little less white because I figure, well, white's pretty blindingly white already. You can change your font. We have auto brightness enabled right now. This is not a graduated slider. It doesn't work like it does on the iPhone, where you can set the relative brightness while auto brightness is on. It's either on or off, and it ignores your slider there pretty much. And here for gesture settings, you can see palm swipe to do a screen capture, palm for muting, smart alert, direct call. There's all sorts of things here. It's all still here. It just might not be enabled for those of you who actually like those features. And for those of you who are new to Samsung, it might be better that some of them are turned off because, well, it can be a little bit distracting at first. So definitely Samsung has done the best job yet. As to whether you prefer pure Android and something like the Nexus 6 versus TouchWiz, that's going to be your decision. But it's not bad. It's not bad at all. And I certainly like it better than what LG's been doing with LG UI, which we just saw recently on the G Flex 2, and it really hasn't evolved at all. And it kind of conflicts with the whole new UI look of Android 5 Lollipop. By the way, this runs Android 5.02 Lollipop, so you've got the latest, greatest at the moment right now. You also have control over things like theming. There's a couple of different color themes. Honestly, none of them are really any better than the default theme. They're kind of, ugh. So, yeah, Samsung's moving in the right direction with aesthetics. In terms of build quality and feel, the phone feels lighter than you would expect. Looking at it, you see all this glass and all this metal, and you think, wow, this should be heavy. It's not. It's quite light. The same thing goes for the regular S6. By the way, they're just about the same dimensions. This one is a little bit narrower. And if you're worrying about how you hold it, really what they're doing is something like what trackpads do and touchscreens on PCs that have both touch and pen. It's sort of like palm rejection. So you can squeeze it here and nothing is happening. I hold it like this all the time, all day long. I'm not accidentally doing anything I don't mean to do. You can actually set either edge to be your active so-called edge display. And when the phone is on, it really doesn't do very much. You have a little swipe out tab right there, and you can have color-coded contacts there. And if a call comes in, the side of the screen will actually glow with that color. So if you've missed a call also, you'll see the color glowing. Everything else with the edge display is really for when the screen is off, which is kind of like a little weird. So you're supposed to take it like that, and we have the edge display active here, so I'll show you. And you do this. And there it is. So we'll turn it this way. You can read it the right side up. You can get the time and the weather, latest breaking news, emails. You can get your stock right here. And it can be a bedside clock for up to 12 hours of the day. You're not allowed to sleep any more than that. It's only up to 12 hours a day. And it's pretty dim and pretty pleasing, so it's not bad. And this is the Rss Reader. I'm not sure how many people want to read RSS news feeds on the side of the phone. But there it is, you can do it. And you can set the time out here. It can be 30 seconds, it can be a minute, it can be 2 minutes, it can be 3 minutes, in case you really do want to spend a lot of time reading. And that's pretty much all your edge display does. And again, you can set it to be on the other side of the phone if you prefer that. So lefty or righty, it doesn't really matter here. And for those of you who like notification LEDs, yes, you still have one right there. And on the opposite side of the logo, that is the 5 megapixel front camera, which, as you might guess, being 5 megapixel, does a pretty good job of taking selfies. From the bottom edge, this looks pretty much embarrassingly like an iPhone 6, doesn't it? Here they are, the two of them together. Uh-oh. At least from the sides, the edge looks quite different from the iPhone. Now the S6, of course, doesn't have that tapered edge and the curved glass, so it's going to look more like the iPhone, which is the one on the top. On the side you have your power button here, and on the other side you have your volume controls. Even though the phone is skinny and there's just a small amount of metal there, it's pretty easy to actually use these. Also, unlike many previous Samsung Galaxy phones that I was always accidentally hitting buttons I didn't mean to, in part because, you know, the display comes out close to the edge. They've got that under control, and particularly the capacitive buttons that used to be a problem for me holding the phone. Not so much anymore. It's just you have a different way of holding the phone, so your palm doesn't tend to overlap over there. Is this as comfortable as the regular Galaxy S6? And we'll show you the Galaxy S6 regular one right now so you can just see the visual difference. So you can see where the regular Galaxy S6 just has, well, a normal edge on it. This one is a little narrower, so it can dig into your hand a little bit more. It's not like a razor. It's not like it's going to hurt you or anything like that, but I was holding it for quite a long time. I was playing a game, I admit it. And it did start to leave a crease in my palm, so yeah. Is it horrible? No, it's not. It's just less ergonomic. Really, it is for the looks. It is pretty. And gosh, it is pretty. In an informal survey at the local Best Buy, 4 out of 5 geeks said they were buying the Edge no matter what, just because it looked better. So there you have it. And looks do count. Look how popular the iPhone is, largely based on how it looks. Another major improvement here from the Galaxy S5 and even from the Note 4 is the fingerprint scanner. No more is it the PC laptop style swipey that you just rest your finger there and you click the button. And it works. It works like every time. If your finger's wet or your finger's dirty, it's not going to work. But other than that, it's just as good as the iPhone 6 in terms of how regular, repeatable, workable, manageable it is. I certainly would leave it enabled at all times because it is that functional. So great improvement there, and that's why you have a physical home button that still moves and clicks, because that's your embedded fingerprint scanner. Your capacitive buttons there, they light up, as you can see when you tap them quickly, as ever are available to you. Headphone jack is at the bottom. I know some of you might be bothered by that, but well, it is there. And we have micro USB 2.0 port. That is our speaker. That is a microphone hole right there. Up top, there is the IR blaster window. This still has the AV remote control, so you can control your home theater gear. Another microphone right there. Our antenna lines, not unlike what we've seen on some iPhones, and this is your nano SIM card tray right there, so you just poke it with the pokey tool to get your SIM card out. Battery is sealed inside on these. Now this is interesting. If you get the Note Edge, you get a 2600 milliamp battery. If you get the regular S6, it's 2550. 50 milliamps, not really very important. I guess they just had a little more room in here for slightly more battery on the Edge model. Go figure. Battery obviously is sealed inside, so you're going to have to use one of those external power packs that plugs into the USB port if you need extra power on the go. Obviously you can't swap a spare battery in here, can you? Nope. Next improvement from the Galaxy S5 is the screen resolution. This is a Super AMOLED display. Samsung loves those, but they do a really good job of it. The whites are actually white on this, which is, well, a pleasant and sometimes rare thing with Super AMOLED displays. Obviously, the blacks are quite black, and it's super duper colorful. So usually you can pick through different color representations on here, but it's actually fairly accurate. It's a lovely display. Now, it's 2560 by 1440 resolution. That's 577 ppi. We all know by now, thanks to Apple, that the so-called retina threshold is about 325 ppi before the eye can no longer discern individual pixels. So if you're comparing this between the S5 and the S6, you know, 400 and something ppi versus 500 and something ppi, it's more for the specs wars. You could argue that because AMOLEDs are pentile matrix, they have fewer subpixels, so text can look a little less sharp, so they might have to try a little harder compared to an IPS display to look, well, just as good. Software on board, of course, you'll have whatever your carrier's bloatware happens to be. Beyond that, we have all the standard Google applications available right there. We have both Chrome and the old Webkit Web Browser. The carriers love to keep the Webkit Web Browser around because, well, not just because they can optimize and tweak it, but they can add their own little annoying toolbars and stuff. And as you can see, for those of you who are worried about what text looks like if it wraps around the edges, it really doesn't so much. I mean, especially because things like web pages tend to have margins on them, so do ebooks. If you're looking at a photo, you'll see a little bit of wrap. It does not distort anything other than light refraction, because curved glass and physics say that some light is going to get reflected around the edges, but I have not had any problems with that. Controls being near the edge over here, they're not off on the side, on the curve there, so this is all still very workable. Anyway, Beautiful, sharp, lovely screen. Colorful. It's very, very nice. Now let's take a look at our G-Flex review so we can hear the speakers and look at video playback. Now this is an interesting thing. When you have the curve on the bottom here, you see how the photograph just kind of wraps around the bottom? I think it actually looks cool. It's not causing me any difficulty reading, but you could get a line of text down here where you're just going to have to scroll up above that line, obviously, if you want to read it, rather than rotate your phone to continue reading. There's our volume around 50%. This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and oh my God, it's a phone, right? There have been so few phones released in the past several months. Well, here we go with the LG G. Not super loud. Let's turn it higher. Ever. Call it the banana phone. Call it whatever you want. Kind of like a snowboarding thing, right? Anyway, there's a point to the curve. It is comfy against your face. It's the curve of your bum. Certainly beautiful looking. That speaker on the bottom won't win any awards. It's no HTC boom sound front-facing stereo speakers there exactly. Thankfully, there is a headphone jack, and there's also Bluetooth as an option for audio. How about display brightness? This one does something like the Note 4 does. It has a super high brightness mode that you're only going to get when it's on auto bright mode. 600 nits on auto brightness. If you go outdoors, it will almost do a kind of, I don't know, super high contrast look that you really wouldn't want to have active at all times. You can actually see it rather than the gradual auto brightness change. You go outside in the sunlight and you'll see it go boop, get a lot brighter. And then the minute you leave, you'll see it drop back down to something more manageable. The maximum brightness, if you're using manual brightness, is around 300 nits, which is plenty bright. That would be considered pretty darn good for a laptop. And for indoor use, that's fine. But for those of you who go indoors, outdoors, change back and forth a lot, you're probably going to want to leave it on auto brightness. Happily, auto brightness is not too terribly dim indoors. Samsung used to be very conservative about that, and I always found it too dark to use indoors. Now it's pretty darn usable. In terms of durability, we have a lot of glass here, right? So, you know, I would be careful. However, there are already incredibly abusive drop tests where we've seen people particularly abuse the edge. And you would think with that glass on the edge, it might be more vulnerable. And dropping it from 6 feet, and it still survives. It is Gorilla Glass 4, front and back. Obviously, like most phones, it's designed with weight distribution, so it's going to hit mostly on the frame. So you'll probably get scuffs and scratches on the frame if you drop it first. But, you know, it's glass. If you slam it hard enough, something will happen. It certainly doesn't flex or bend when I try to do that. Not that I'm recommending you do that to any phone either. Really try hard to bend it. It's certainly no G-Flex. It's not designed to flex, but it is very rigid. It seems fairly durable. It is still glass. All right, here's the geeky part for you benchmark lovers. Right here we have 3D Mark with the Ice Storm Unlimited test, and you can see it scored 21,160, which is good, and it's right up there with the best of the Snapdragon 805 and the Snapdragon 810 as well. Of course, this one's doing a lot more heavy lifting than some competitors like the HTC One M9, because that one has a 1920 by 1080 display, considerably lower resolution than this 2560 by 1440 display. Now for the Sunspider JavaScript test, where lower numbers are better, unlike most other benchmarks, this is the Webkit Web Browser, which is generally speaking faster than Chrome. In this case, it's wildly different number. 407 milliseconds, that's really very good. Usually anything like 500 is pretty darn impressive. That is with the Webkit Web Browser. Let's look at what happened with Chrome, though. Chrome, the best number we got actually was 1025 milliseconds. So, well, you might want to actually use the Webkit Web Browser if you're in a hurry, at least when it comes to JavaScript rendering. For Geekbench 3, the score was 1454 for the single core and 4619 for the multi-core test, which is some of the best numbers we have ever seen on an Android phone. Very impressive there. Now for our quadrant score, you can see very, very good number, 33,592. Right there at the top. So is it a fast device? Yes, it is. I mean, that 2.1 gigahertz Exynos is a screamer, and the Mali T760 graphics are also good performers here. It can handle any game you throw at it. I've been playing Asphalt 8, various first-person shooter games. Those tend to be demanding. Virtua Tennis, just because it's fun, has nice graphics too, and we'll show you some of those. And it runs fast. And again, like I said, I just can't really make this thing lag any more than, say, occasionally like my Nexus 6 does. Every once in a while, Android just has a little hiccup. And we do have 3 gigs of RAM on board too to help with multitasking. Nice there. So how about battery life? I know a lot of you are fond of this particular battery utility, so we have this one up and available right now, and you can see 27% used in 4 hours and 49 minutes. That's pretty darn impressive, considering I've run several benchmarks during that period of time, played a race in Asphalt 8 on this, and done all the normal things, had a call on it, use it for web browsing, email, all the usual things. So battery life has been quite good on this. It looks like it's maybe doing better than the Snapdragon 810, at least what we've seen so far on the LG G Flex 2 and the HTC One M9 that are using the Snapdragon. Does it get hot sometimes? Yes, it does. Particularly if you're charging and using data, whether it's Wi-Fi or LTE, you're going to feel heat. But get downright hot right on this area here. Also, when we repeatedly ran benchmarks, we noticed that it did get hot, and eventually it would thermal throttle. Now, all phones will do that. If the CPU is just getting too hot because you're really slamming it, and that's something that high-end benchmarks will do, it's going to throttle down on the speed to let the phone cool down. Now, in experience with normal things that people do, like playing games, I have not had it thermally throttle. And while we're looking at this back one more time, by the way, this supports both Qi and PMA wireless charging, both standards in the same device, which is pretty unusual. Overall, I think Qi devices are probably the more common these days, but some of you may have PMA chargers left over, so either one's going to work. It comes with a quick charger. Obviously, it's not a Qualcomm CPU or chipset, so you're not getting Qualcomm quick charge on board, but it's one of Samsung's quick charger, 3 amp maximum output, and indeed it works. And I also use the Motorola quick charger that I have, and that one worked just as well too. So it looks like you can go either way with that if you happen to have a second quick charger in-house. If you're using wireless charging, that charges at a slower rate. That's more like average normal charging speed, not quick charging rate, where you can go up to 40% battery increase in, say, half an hour or so. So let's test some gaming. First, we have Asphalt 8 Airborne here with our lovely and lowly Dodge Dart. Frame rates are looking pretty good right now. Aha! Passed them already. We have the usual effects showing up on the windshield there, just to make things a little bit more difficult for us, but supposedly more realistic. Pick up some nitro. Hey! Bounce off the guardrail. It's playing very well. Let's use some nitro. See how it handles that. Yes, good times. It is working well. World's most durable Dodge Dart. So there's Asphalt 8 on the Samsung Galaxy S6 Edge. Of course, the colors are just stupendous on this Super AMOLED high-resolution display. Oh yeah. And how about Virtua Tennis for a change? Certainly, it's a beautiful enough looking game. Oh, bad guess there. And there's our baseline game. Looking good, really. This is a great phone for games with a beautiful display and the fast processor. Oops. That was Virtua Tennis on the Samsung Galaxy S6 Edge. So how about the camera? Rear 16 megapixel camera with optical image stabilization, OIS. Very nice. 4K video recording. And again, that front camera is 5 megapixel. For a front camera, it's pretty darn good. Now you can double press the home button to launch the camera, which I just love. So you don't have to hunt around for your camera icon. And the interface is the same as we've seen before for Samsung. So you got here for video, tap that, immediately starts recording. Switch front and back cameras right there. We have our mode selector, selective focus, which means get your blurry background effect there, panorama, virtual shot, slow motion recording. You can record 1080p at 30 frames per second and keep all of the image stabilization and other software features. Or you can go to 60 frames at 1080p and then no more optical image stabilization. You also won't get the optical image stabilization at 4K video recording. So here we have our HDR auto mode, flash control, picture size, tracking, autofocus. Also note it actually does a pretty good job. That's handy for video. Video stabilization, you can turn that on and off, location tags, so on. Voice control for those of you who want to do the say cheese shutter kind of thing. So how do the pictures and the video that it takes? Let's check that out. Silver cars in bright sunlight are often tricky, and it did a good job of really not whiting out. We're going just about to white there, but you know what? Even a dedicated SLR camera might do that. And the level of detail there is quite good, and the dynamic range is very good. I was actually using Photoshop to play with the dynamic range on some of these photos after the fact, and I felt a little bit like I was actually using a digital SLR. I was pretty impressed. Now, you're not going to get that level of focus, background defocus, and things like that you're going to get with something like a digital SLR, but it's pretty good. Now, how about indoor dark lighting? That was something that really killed the Galaxy S5. It just wasn't a great low light camera. This was taken in very, very dark cave-like room with just a little natural light coming through. And granted, there's some smudging of detail, but there's also still a lot of actual detail you can see on the cat's fur, right down to the, gee, I should vacuum his bed. You can see hair on the outside of the bed. Outdoor shot, very crisp, very good colors. Tends to be a little bit warmer than the iPhone 6 if you're wondering. Otherwise, you know, it's a matter of preference. Warm is nice. It makes humans look a little bit healthier and ruddier. In terms of which camera is better, iPhone 6 or this, or iPhone 6 Plus, really, because you got optical image stabilization just like the iPhone 6 Plus, I would say that it's really, really hard to call a winner there. They're both that good. Look at the detail on the rocks right there. And these rocks that often white out with many camera phones, they didn't. They kept the detail. And doing some macro-like shots, we actually have a little bit of background defocus going on here. Beautiful colors and nice sharp pictures right there. Now this is a shot we just did with the LG G Flex, which has a very good 13 megapixel camera, and this actually did a better job of catching the reflections on the water and dealing with the very bright water outside the spa area of the pool versus the inside. So another angle, a lot of detail, very good. The pebbles, the slate, the colors are very nice. It's really, really very good. And here's some video that we recorded. 4K video with the Samsung Galaxy S6 Edge. Looking pretty smooth, even though there's no stabilization in 4K mode. Sounds pretty darn good looking, isn't it? And honestly, the 1080p video also looks pretty good. And yes, the Super AMOLED makes those colors look saturated, but even playing that back on my Mac afterwards, I have to say the colors really were very, very vibrant. It's just a very nice camera. And lastly, how about the front camera? There it is, taken with the front camera. Really, it's better than some low-end cameras' main camera. There's a lot of color in there. It's not as saturated, granted, as the rear camera does. It's pretty sharp, though. No blocky, no grainy. You can count my teeth. I mean, goodness. It's not bad, really. It's very good. And here, wow, nice numbers there. Here you can see we're running speedtest.net live, so you can see it. Now again, this is a T-Mobile phone. Speeds will vary depending on your carrier and your carrier's coverage and speeds in your area. And for T-Mobile, that's really some of the better numbers that we've seen in our office here. Nice. Good speed, and this does have a very fast LTE modem inside that Samsung designed themselves, 300 megabit per second maximum speed on the modem, and well, it's doing the job right there. Call quality on the phone, Samsung always does a good job with that. Really nice, full, rich, clear, not a problem. So overall, I mean, Samsung has really hit it out of the park with this. We haven't always been super praising Samsung phones, but in this case, just a gorgeous design. Stunning screen, your choice of the, wow, it looks cool, Edge model or the $100 cheaper normal Galaxy S6. Fast performance here. It keeps heat under control, generally speaking. And this has got to be the most restrained version of TouchWiz yet, to the point where I actually don't mind it. I'm not going to put Nova Launcher on here just to escape the foibles of it. No, and the cameras on these, really very good. It's really giving the iPhone 6 a run for its money. So that's the Samsung Galaxy S6 Edge. Again, whether you get the Edge or the non-Edge, just the regular S6, you're getting the same phone, same internals, same everything. Depends on which one you like the look of better. Since there's not a lot of functionality going on here with the Edge version, it just looks awfully pretty. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to visit mobiletechreview.com for the full written review. It's in the product description. And hit that like button.